Casey, so the one I can see says applying for postgraduate funding for 2025. Is that the right one?
That's correct.
Perfect.
Thank you. Right. So this call that's currently open is available for masters and doctoral studies in 2025. So anybody currently completing their honors or their masters and would like to apply for next year's funding. I'm going to be presenting using the NRF slides. I don't think it's actually moving slides. There we go. Can you see the next slide, Diane?
Yeah, perfect.
So these slides were compiled by the NRF. So I'll be going through these first of all, and then I will be going through specific Centre of Excellence in Maths and Stats slides. So as I mentioned, these applications of the Masters and Doctoral Studies for next year, there are various documents that need to be read before you actually apply for, go online and apply for the NRF funding. These were sent out in the call that we published a few weeks ago. They can also be found on the NRF website and on our CoE-MaSS website. So those are the two websites available for those documents. Sorry, my screen is on the wrong screen. I'm just going to turn my camera off for now.
Casey, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Just in terms of these websites and stuff, the links, just to say that I will be putting these slides and a video of this session up on the website, but these can be found if they go to our website. They can find all this documentation.
Thanks, Diane. Right, the NRF has had to implement for a number of years specific targets for bursary allocations. Now, this is due to the NRF receiving their funding from taxpayer money. So there are certain citizen targets, first of all. So of all the applicants that apply through the centre or through the NRF portal itself, 95% of applicants have to be from South Africa or be South African permanent residents, with only 5% of applicants being outside of South Africa. So that includes the rest of Africa and the rest of the world. And then gender targets, the applicants, the Centre of Excellence can only approve bursary amounts as long as there are 55% women in that pool of applicants that are accepted. Then for the South African targets, 90% of successful applicants have to be Black, and that includes Black, Coloureds and Indians, and 10% white. And the NRFs are striving towards a disability percentage of 1%. So if you are a non-South African, the chances of you getting an NRF award are quite slim, but I'm not saying don't apply. Okay, then there's various criteria for the allocation of the funding. First of all, there has to be a recommendation by the institution. Now, you will be applying for the funding through the Centre of Excellence. So the recommendation would come from the Centre of Excellence. All applications are looked at on merit. They are reviewed by a review panel, and various factors are taken into account when reviewing those applications. And we will go through those a bit later on in the presentation. The knowledge area is very specific to certain funders. So in the Centre of Excellence, we are targeting the various mathematical and statistical sciences, which is quite a broad range. If you go to our CoE-MaSS website, under the focus area page, you will see all the specific themes or focus areas that we cover in the centre. And there's a lot of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary studies within the centre. The eligibility for uninterrupted NRF funding. So that is where you would have gone from an honours straight to a master's and possibly a PhD. The budget is always a huge constraint because there's limited funding for scholarships. And then on top of that, besides the targets that I spoke about on the previous slide, the NRF also have annual performance plans of their own, so that they need to meet that are outside of the targets specified just now. An important one is institutional rate of scholarship. So this is where you will be applying to a particular university for 2025. It may not be the same institution that you're currently completing your qualification through. So then what the NRF look at is the distribution of applicants across the universities, and they focus quite highly on the historically disadvantaged universities. They also look at the postgraduate enrollments at each institution and the institutional spread, the geographical area of the applicants, and then eligibility for full cost funding. FCS stands for full cost funding. So a couple of things that they look at: a financial need as determined by an ISFAP means test. Previously, if you were funded by NSFAS or ISFAP funded students, people with disabilities, and academic high achievers. So these are very important criteria in the allocation of the funding. Then the screening process conducted by the NRF. So there are various reasons why applicants will be screened out at the NRF, but as well as that, you may be screened out before your application gets to the NRF. So the first reason is academic merit eligibility. For applications to be accepted, a minimum criteria of 65% on your current qualification is required. So if you don't achieve that, you will automatically be rejected. Missing referees' responses. So in the application, you will have to submit a referee letter. Age eligibility. If you're holding full-time employment, you cannot apply for an NRF scholarship. Missing required documents and no project outline. This is essential when submitting your application. The impact on the higher education institutions submitting ineligible applications. This, if the actual university submits your application without some of these documents, this will delay the screening process. And we at the higher education institutions are urged to follow all those screening checklists before we actually submit to the NRF. Very important is the application support input. If your supervisor's letter is not attached, you will not be considered for funding. So it's exceptionally important. Sorry, could you mute your microphone, please? So if your supervisor's letter is not attached, you will not be considered for funding. Right, let's go through more in detail the eligibility and the funding period. Now, the honours call for applications is not opened yet. So we focus in this presentation on Masters and Doctoral Studies. So you have a maximum period of 2 years support, 2 years NRF support for a master's degree and 3 years for a doctoral degree. If you are upgrading from a master's to a doctoral degree, you have 4 years. And then if for some reason you are not able to complete your qualification in those set times, you can apply for an extension, which can be either 6 months or 12 months. 6 months for a master's and doctoral is 12 months. But just remember that this extension is not guaranteed and it is dependent on funding restrictions. And the period of support, and this is very important, the period of support is calculated from the first year of registration. So if you started your master's degree in 2024 and you're applying only now for an NRF bursary for next year, being your second year of master's, then you will only receive a scholarship for 1 year, or if you apply for an extension of further 6 months. Master's and doctoral bursaries are open to South African citizens, permanent residents, and international students. It's only the honours degrees that are only open to South African residents and South African citizens and permanent residents. Eligibility for a full cost bursary. So on the left-hand side here, we have your full cost bursaries, which are only offered to South African citizens and permanent residents. We've got exceptional academic achievers. So for those bursaries, you need to have received more than or equal to 75% in your final year of study. And then it also depends on the field of study that you're in, and there are obviously certain fields that are more highly rated than others. But I'm pleased to tell you that the Centre of Excellence is one of those centres that addresses skills that are in need in the country. So the field of study here would be fine. And also, on top of that, you have to have completed your honours year in 1 year. So if you did your honours year in 2 years and received a 75% or above average, you will not qualify for the exceptional academic achievers. And then doctoral studies, 75%, and completing masters in 2 years. Excuse me. So that is for the exceptional academic achievers, and there's a separate pool of funding for those applicants. Then we have the financially needy and students with disability. So for that, applicants would need to have achieved 65% or more for their honours and have completed their honours in 1 year, or 65% in their masters and completed their masters in 2 years, and that's for doctoral studies. And then partial cost funding is available to South African citizens and permanent residents, and also to non-South African citizens. So for that, you won't get the full amount that the NRF offers, and I'll go through the values shortly. But the requirements are exactly the same for the partial cost funding, both for honours and for doctoral studies. The NRF set an age restriction for postgraduate funding. And this is really so that graduates are able to work for a long time in the workplace and benefits the South African economy. So that's really the reasoning behind this age restriction. So the maximum age at application for a master's degree is 30 years. You would then have 2 years to complete your master's, so the anticipated maximum age would be 32 years. For doctoral studies, the maximum age at application is 32 years, and therefore, if your doctoral degree takes 3 years, you would be 35 years of age when you complete. So if you are 32 years and you try and apply for a master's degree, it actually won't even give you that option. You have to be 30 or below to apply for a master's degree. There are exclusions for NRF postgraduate funding. So the majority of bursaries will be awarded in a manner where national priorities, vulnerable disciplines like the maths and stats are awarded first. In order for the NRF to realize its goal of contributing to the economy, at least 1% of all global research and development output, the NRF will not fund undergraduate qualifications, postgraduate certificates or diplomas, masters by coursework only, and professional masters and doctoral degrees. So when reviewing the documentation and reviewing this presentation, while you're busy applying for this, just remember these restrictions. Once you've applied, it's gone through the whole review process, and the NRF offer you a bursary through the Centre of Excellence. For master's degrees, for both degrees, you will be given a conditions of grant letter to be signed. Now, this has to confirm your honours mark. If you're doing a master's degree, confirmation of your mark being either 65 or 75 at your honours level, because obviously most of you who are applying for a master's bursary now will probably still be completing your honours degree this year. So you would have to confirm that. You would have to submit academic transcripts, a copy of your SAID, and proof of registration at the university under which you applied. So if you decided you wanted to apply at the University of Venda for the 2025 academic year, when you awarded the NRF bursary, you have to do it through the University of Venda and send through your proof of registration. The same applies for doctoral studies, but the confirmation will be of you at your master's level, and there are the submission deadlines for your conditions of grant. So remember, this is only once you're awarded your scholarship. Those are the cut-off dates for your conditions of grant. And this documentation will be sent to you via the NRF. Now, most important, the funding values. There are different categories. As I mentioned, we've got full cost bursaries and full cost scholarships and partial cost scholarships. So the RAND value for master's study, full cost scholarships is almost 183,000, and partial cost about 127,000. That's per annum. You will be offered an electronic study device allowance of 10,000 Rand for the master's and doctoral studies, but only if you're on a full cost scholarship. And the assistive technology device is only available to students living with a disability. and that would be 20,000 for both the master's and doctoral full cost studies. Now, the financial means test. In the previous slide, I mentioned that there was a certain allocation of funding for exceptional achievers, and then the other side of it was financially needy students. So for this category, you will have to undergo a financial means test. If you've never gone through one before, your designated authority at your institution will assist you initiating the process of the financial means test. You will receive an Excel spreadsheet, and you will have to complete that and send it back to the delegated authority. Now, the delegated authority is an NRF representative. At each institution, you will have a DA, and they are usually in the research office. But you will need to liaise with the DA from the university to which you applied for your 2025 studies. And then the DA will send the completed documents to the NRF by the middle of August. The NRF will submit it to ISFAP, and then an outcome will be available by the 15th of December. Now, if you have previously received either NSFAS funding, or if you've gone through an ISFAP assessment test, you do not need to go through this financial means test again. You will just have to upload the necessary documentation. Then some key requirements for implementing this call that's now out for the 2025 academic year. Master's and doctoral applications with an average merit of below 65% will be rejected if you've completed those studies. So if for example, last year you completed your honours degree, so you have your results, if they were less than 65%, they will be rejected. But if you're currently busy with your qualification, for example, your honours degree, you won't have your final results available. So you will not be rejected in the first round if your studies are still in progress. If you graduated from 2021 and your academic transcript only indicates a pass, this will not be accepted. Since 2021, all degree qualifications have had to have an actual percentage on the transcript. So if you graduated prior to 2021 with either a pass or pass with distinction, you will be able to apply, and international students will also be able to apply just with a pass on their qualification. So this is only for students who graduated prior to 2021. The timelines for the applications. So at the moment, the call is open and there are various calls available. Now, the one that you will be applying to is the grant holder linked program, which I'll go through in a short while, going through the actual NRF website. You must include the CoE-MaSS's unique identifier so that it can be assigned to the Centre of Excellence. Otherwise, it just goes to the general pool of students. And obviously, applying to the Centre of Excellence, you have a higher chance of getting a bursary. Then the NRF considers the applications and will either look at a full cost bursary or a partial cost bursary. As I mentioned, the full cost is for exceptional achievers, financially needy, and students with a disability, and the partial cost is international students and other students. The timelines, and these are very important. As we specified in our emails to you, the deadline for the NRF application process is the 5th of July. I'll state this again later on, but please don't leave it till the very last minute on the 5th of July. Try and submit your application on the 3rd or the 4th of July, so that if you have any system technical issues, there's still time to sort that out. No applications will be accepted by the NRF after the 5th of July. And then the designated authorities and the Centre of Excellence have time to review your applications, and that closing date is the 6th of September. And you will be advised by the NRF whether you've been successful or not by the 20th of December, although the Centres of Excellence will be advised the week before, and we will also communicate with successful applicants. There is also feedback to unsuccessful applicants, and that's by the 31st of January next year. And then there's an appeals process that will close on the 28th of February. I will go through the appeals process shortly. Then what happens is if you, this is a once-off open call for the year, but if for some reason you are not able to submit your application, what happens is next year there will be an ad hoc application process for bursary scholarships that can then be awarded, but only during next year. So this is only if you do not meet this deadline, and also it is very dependent on budget availability. So in the CoE, we set our budgets towards the end of this year, and then from that we know exactly how many honours, master's, doctoral students we accept. So it's unlikely that you would be able to apply through the ad hoc process for CoE funding, but you may be able to apply for the general NRF full funding. The review process that is conducted by each institution. So the applications will be reviewed at the university by the designated authority. The reviews are undertaken using standardized scorecards, and then the designated authority will submit any applications that meet all the requirements to the NRF. And the NRF will then review all of those. Each application needs to be signed off, in our case, by the Centre of Excellence, as we are the funding body. We put those forward to the DAs at the various institutions. And the documents that are shared with the NRF are the detailed scorecards that I will show you now, but our independent panel reviews those and scores your application according to those requirements, and then that template is shared with the NRF. So this is the Master's Funding Review scorecard, and this is for new applicants. So you'll see that there are 4 categories that you will be assessed on. The 2 biggest categories is, first of all, academic merit, and then item 4 is your project outline. So that academic merit is obviously based on the 65% or the 75% for exceptional students. And the rating is done on a 4-point scale. So you really want to achieve excellent or good on your review. So please make sure, if you're doing your honours this year, applying for masters, put in every effort to achieve as high as possible in your honours degree to be awarded close to 35% of that if you get an excellent number 3. Completion time for previous degrees. As I said, the honours degree completing in 1 year, master's degree in 2 years, for applications into those next degrees. Priority research area, so it needs to be aligned with one of the national research priorities, and those are available on the NRF portal. And then project outline. Please spend a lot of time on your project outline. It also counts 30%, and a very poor project outline will make you not eligible for funding. Also work on your project outline with your proposed supervisor. So hopefully you've got somebody in mind that you've discussed the project with. Let them assess your project outline, get feedback, make any changes for improvement to that project outline, because that is very important. For doctoral funding, you'll see there's 6 categories. Also academic merit, completion time for previous degree, and priority research areas. Those are the same as the master's application. But then we've got track record or research output. So if you, in your master's degree, attended conferences, presented at conferences, if you had a publication, either from a conference or journal article, you know, that will give you a higher rating. So you would put those down in your application. And then the originality of the doctoral study is very important. Is it something that just so many people have done, or is it something very unique? And then the potential impact. So again, this is important. How is your project going to contribute to the research strategies and strategic goals of our economy? And again, please discuss these areas with your potential supervisor so that your application is as comprehensive as possible. These are the extension support review cards, your progress, reasons why the study could not be completed, and your work plan to complete it. So this is only for existing students. And then feedback to applicants. As I mentioned just now, the screened applicants are screened at the various universities and deemed eligible or not eligible. And then it goes through the DAs and through the NRF, and then the successful applicants are notified, as I said, by the 20th of December through correspondence, but also through bursaries outcome link on this page. Progress reporting is very important. So please, when you get, you won't remember this now, but please, when you get your conditions of grant next year, please make sure that you look at how many progress reports are required and when the progress reports are required. The appeals process, if you are unsuccessful in your application, you can only appeal the process if it's procedural or through scientific merit. So for procedural grounds, if your application was not properly reviewed, or you felt that there was a conflict of interest with the assessment panel, administrative errors, any of those items, then you can appeal your the decision, and as well as that, you can also do, appeal on scientific merit. If there's a scientific disagreement between the assessment panel members, or if you believe that there's bias in the application. Please remember, you cannot submit any new documentation with the appeals process. And the appeals process is undertaken by the university, and then it would be submitted to the NRF if the decision was to officially review it. Okay, so that is the first part of the presentation. My second presentation is more on the actual NRF system. So, as I mentioned, please read all documentation very clearly.
Sorry, can you just full screen that slideshow?
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
These are the 4 documents that were shared. They're available on the NRF website, as well as I mentioned, they are also available on the CoE website. When you start your application,
I see, sorry, it's still not, it's still not full screening.
That's strange, it's full screen on my screen.
Let's try again, maybe. It just impacts it in that we can't see when you change slides. Yeah, perfect, thanks.
So you would go to the NRF Connect website, and it would bring up the screen for you to log on or register with an ORCID ID. So an ORCID ID is a unique identifier, and that is associated to you in your academic career and going forward, almost like an ID number where you can link all your research, all your studies, your CV, etc. So if you have already got an ORCID ID, you would fill in your ORCID ID and all your email address and the password. If you don't have one, you would click on register, and it would take you to this screen that will allow you to register for an ORCID ID, and then you would be able to log on to NRF Connect system. This is what you would be presented with when you go onto that system. The first thing you'll notice is it gives you an ID reference number for your that is linked to your ORCID ID. So this is your ORCID ID number. And if you have any queries that you need to ask for support from the NRF, you have to use your application number, which you'll see just now, and your ORCID number to request for information. Otherwise, they won't be able to track it. If you have previously done an NRF application, your information will already be here, but please make certain it is correct and update it if necessary. And make sure you will see that your ID document is actually compulsory, but please make sure you upload a clear copy of your identity document or your passport to this, most important. Personal information sections, very straightforward. You've got a primary address. You can put in an alternate email address if you wish. And then your career history record. And this is particularly important if you want to apply for an exceptional academic excellence scholarship. You can put in any accomplishments in whatever organization you've been at. But this is not a compulsory section. And then your qualifications and certifications record. So this would be your highest level of qualification. So if you're applying for a master's degree and you haven't yet completed your honors degree, then your completed qualification will be your undergraduate degree. So you would complete all of that information. And then you will see on the left-hand side, you've got My Applications. So under Applications, you will see various things: infrastructure grants, institutional grants, then NRF postgraduate scholarships. Please make sure you apply for either the master's or doctoral, not the Sarau doctoral and master's. That is a different category of funding. As I mentioned earlier, there are those age restrictions for applying for the different degrees. So if, for example, you are 34 and you want to apply for a doctoral degree, it won't be visible. In fact, neither master's or doctoral will be visible. So you will not be able to apply. So just remember that if they're not there, it means that it's because of your age. And you can't actually even send an email to the NRF querying this because it is dependent on that. And for your application, you will see there are various categories: personal profile, some of them we've been through, research outputs, geographical areas, financial needs assessment, details of research, etc. Now, anything with a red star means it's a compulsory section. And for example, career history is a non-compulsory section. You will also be able to track what you've completed so far and what is still missing. Under this complete, you will see the ticks or the crosses, and you would obviously go to all the compulsory crosses especially, and you would go to edit your information on the right-hand side. And very important at the end are the attachments that you will need to add. I'm just going through very quickly the sections. Most of them are self-explanatory. The academic information sections, your qualifications record, your scientific domain. So this is important, especially when you're applying to the Centre of Excellence. It must be something related to the mathematical and statistical sciences. So there your research scientific domain may be natural sciences and your primary research field, mathematical sciences. But they are all drop-down, so you will have to choose from those drop-downs. Your secondary field, your field of specialization, so you would have to fill in all of these factors. Obviously, you only have to fill in one field of specialization. You can do a second or third one, but that is not compulsory. If you have published any work, you can add the document identifier of that publication, and you will see when you put in that particular DOI, it would automatically fill in everything related to that. But this is a non-compulsory section if you haven't published anything. Very important is the financial field section. So as I said, applicants who were previously or currently funded by NSFAS or ISFAP, you must just upload your proof of funding in the form of an official university stamp financial statement showing exactly where your funding is coming from, and then a statement from the funder or a letter from NSFAS or ISFAP or the university stating that you are receiving funding from them. So have you previously received or currently receiving NSFAS or ISFAP funding? You would check yes or no, and then mark the financial means test, and do you consent? Do you give consent for one to be done? If not, under the application category section, as I mentioned earlier, you would be applying under the CoE-MaSS pot of money as such. So when you put in your application for either master's or doctorate, it will come up and ask you, are you registered as a full-time student? And then, very important, for the scholarship applying for, it does have a drop down, but you're going to use scholarship linked to NRF funded researcher. Although we're not a specific researcher, we fall under the researcher pot. And you would need to complete the CoE-MaSS unique identifier, which is 91486. And as soon as you type that in, the funding opportunity on the left-hand side would be listed as CoE-MaSS. So do not omit this step, because otherwise your application will go in the general pool. And then here, this is where it relates to the degree you're applying for, master's or doctorate. And this is where you would put in the institution that you will be studying at in 2025. As I mentioned, you may be at one institution currently this year, or you may not even be studying this year. This information is for the institution that you have or will be applying for next year. You would put in your short project title, your description, and a short abstract. And then the funding would be for 2025, maximum 2 years, and funding end year would be 2026. It asks you various questions about whether you are registered for the degree. Do you have a master's degree that you want to upgrade to a doctorate degree, etc.? Just review those and answer the relevant questions. And academic achievements, so your previous degree that has been completed. So as I said, if you currently doing your honors, you will put in your undergraduate degree and your average mark and the date it was completed. The GPA, which is the grade point average that I've been speaking about, is 65%. If you do not receive that, once you have completed your qualification, so this will only be confirmed next year when you are required to submit those conditions of grant, you will submit your final results for the qualification. And if it is not more than 65%, your scholarship will be cancelled. Details of master's research. So these are the sections I discussed: your project outline and alignment to national imperatives. Please look carefully at these. The rubric was on slide 23, is on slide 23 of this presentation, and make sure you complete those as comprehensively as possible. Again, please get input from your proposed supervisor. So for the masters, you would have to put in the NRF broad category, the national priorities that your project aligns to, the national strategies and sustainability development goals. And then for doctoral research, again, there are more categories. These are listed, and how it is assessed is on slide 24. And here you would also need to include literature references. And again, those different categories you would need to complete. In the last section, attachments, please make sure that you read the framework documents very clearly and attach all the compulsory documents. And then, very important, you must get a letter of recommendation from your proposed supervisor that will be supervising you in 2025. Any applications that do not have the supervisor recommendation will be rejected. So make sure that you get that. This section has also changed from previous years, where you would have to fill in your supervisor details and they would then have to log on to the NRF system and upload their recommendation. So I think this is going to close the loop and be more beneficial, because you would then know that your supervisor has given you the letter. And if they haven't, you can follow up with them. Before submitting the application, there is a preview option. Please preview your application and read through it carefully and make any changes, editing changes, etc. What I suggest is, for the information like your project outline, please make sure that you save it in a Word document or another document, so that if something critical happens on the NRF website and you lose that section of the application, you've got it somewhere else. And you should have been discussing it with your supervisor previously, so you should have it in an alternate format. But preview your application and also check for spelling errors. There's nothing worse than us reviewing your application and there is a whole lot of spelling errors. So please check that. Once you're happy with your application, so if necessary, go back and edit any sections. Once you're happy with your application, please download the preview document and send us a copy to the CoE-MaSS mailbox, so that we are aware that you've actually applied, and we can also follow up and check if everything's been submitted. We can follow up with the various DAs at all the universities. It just makes it easier, and we can find out if there are any bottlenecks. But once you've previewed it and sent it to us, you must please submit to the NRF. There is a submit button, and without pressing that submit button, your application will not go through to the NRF. Again, as I mentioned, please do not leave your application to the last minute. If there are system issues, you will need time to sort them out. Now, if you haven't, for example, got your final project outline finished, but you want to start your application today, you can do all the other sections today, over the weekend, and then once you've finalized your project outline with your prospective supervisor, then you can go back into the system and then just upload it. So as you go through the various sections, you will just save them, and you don't have to complete everything in one sitting. These are just contact details at your institution. So as I said, each institution has an NRF representative, usually in the research office. Please make sure you find out who they are, because they really need to be your first port of call. And always use your application reference number, which I actually didn't point out. My apologies. Let me just go back. Underneath my applications, you'll see reference number, PMDS, and then a whole long number. So that is your reference number. And then you can also put your ORCID ID number when querying it with your institution. And then if there are issues with the NRF site, you can contact them directly. You can also send it to the support line and CC your designated authority to query anything, and you must obtain a ticket reference number. Alternatively, any queries for first-time honours, masters and doctoral queries can be sent to Ms. Malachotla Finger at the NRF, and that's her email address. For masters and doctoral extension support, you can contact Ms. Ntokozo Koneni at the NRF with her email address. As Diane mentioned, we will be sending out this presentation as well as putting the recording on our website. So you will be able to refer back to any sections. But I now would like to find out if anybody has any questions for me. Diane, I can't see the hands, so you'll have to assist.
So we've got, I don't know if you can see the chat. There are some in the chat. But everyone, if you want to, someone's just unmuted. Yeah, you keep jumping back and forth.
No, sorry, that was a mistake. Sorry.
Oh, hi. Oh, okay. But Simon, do you want to come forward, please?
Yeah, so I've got a couple questions. So my main one is, so I'm not sure how my academic applicability is calculated, because my master's was upgraded into PhD. So I don't have a mark for master's because that, like, it wasn't marked because it got upgraded. Does everything get based off my, like, honors marks, or is there like a different way?
It would be based on your honors marks, but because you were awarded an NRF were you awarded an NRF masters?
No, I wasn't.
No. Okay. I would have to find out about that. I'll make a note for you, and then what I'll do is I'll just add these things into the presentation before it's sent out.
Okay.
So you're applying for basically a doctorate, but it's been upgraded.
Yes. So according to this framework, I'd be third year. I'm currently a third year PhD, and then I'm applying for funding for the final year next year.
Or final year. Okay.
Okay. And then for so I just want to double check. So would so I saw that machine intelligence and learning from experience is one of the research areas. So is that so mine my supervisors are listed under those researchers as part of those researchers. So does that mean that I'm just part of CoE-MaSS?
Yeah, well, not necessarily part of CoE, but from our website, as you mentioned, there are researchers. You don't have to, your proposed supervisor does not have to be one of those researchers. So that's point one. But if there are there, as long as your research falls under one of those thematic areas, then you would be able to apply for an NRF bursary under the CoE. But it doesn't matter who your supervisor is.
All right. And just so with the academic applicability, so my honors, it was weighted average was only like 69%, but then there's obviously like the big jump from getting upgraded from masters to doctorate. Do you know if that's I'd be applicable?
69%. Oh, okay. For the exceptional.
Yeah, for the like exceptional academic achiever, or
I will find out.
okay, thank you. Then so I'm just checking. Then just to double check, so one of the does just would computer science can't fall under natural sciences for the categories on that application?
Yes, it would.
Okay, great. Yeah, those were my questions. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thanks. I'm aware that there are two people with their hands up. If you don't mind, I'm just going to try and get through the chat questions as well. So before I come to Ingrid, I'm just going to read a question from Ethan. So Ethan said, what are the conditions and disabilities that are included in the disability category? Does it encompass neurodevelopmental conditions such as ADHD? I know something about this, but Casey, do you want to go first?
From the top of my head, it should, but I'm not 100% sure. It may be in one of those all documents, and I'll have a look now, but maybe Diane, you can just continue.
Yeah, like I think looking at the call documents is the first thing to do. All I know is that there's a lot of like paperwork involved, and I know the government documentation on what does and doesn't count as a disability it can be quite vague, and I don't know if the NRF works specifically on that. But I know that there's a lot of like you've got to get a doctor or a psychiatrist to like fill out forms and all sorts of things as well. But yeah, I think look at the call documents, because hopefully they're less vague than the government, like the other government documents, because it's something that I looked at out of interest actually a while ago, and I know that it can be very vague, but like Casey, like you said, it should do. Okay, so
it does have a section on disabilities, but it doesn't actually outline what the disabilities are. So I will try and find out.
Okay, Ethan, I'll tell you what, I will put my email address in the chat. And
what I'll do is I'll put in an additional slide answering these questions.
Okay, perfect. So if there are any questions, like Ethan, if you want to pop me an email with your name, just remind me of what the question was. And then we can have another look into it as well, because I think that's something we really need to be a bit clearer on. Like I said, it's so vague at the moment. Okay, Ingrid. Just unmute.
Hi. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I just have a few questions regarding some semantics and then a few more specific ones. So I am currently in my first year of my master's, and I was just wondering, I'm applying for next year. So when they asked me what the maximum funding years are, will I then specify 1 year instead of 2, since I will have already completed 1 year?
Yes, because it links it to the date of your first registration.
Okay, so but in my application, I will say 1 year.
That's right.
All right. I was also wondering, it happens quite often that masters can be completed in 1.5 years instead of 2 years. So how does the NRF handle such cases if I were to graduate in September instead of March or May of 2026?
I think you would still get the full year's funding.
Yeah, I know people who've done that. Who have,
Yeah.
and they just graduate and that's it. They get the full
Yeah.
year. Because you don't really know that it's going to take you a year and a half. Like, you don't
Yes.
know, so it's 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. I was also wondering, since I completed my honors and my honors research report was submitted to SASA due to its performance, and I was wondering, could I include that in my supporting documents as like
Under your achievements.
Yes, as an additional, I want to say, support to my academic achievements?
No, you definitely can, and that's where there is that section for any achievements. So I would outline them there, and then definitely add that as supporting document.
Okay, perfect. And my final question is regarding, I have already applied. I applied last year while I was completing my honors. I applied for NRF funding, and I never received any feedback regarding it. And when I go onto the NRF Connect website, the status is still saying NRF funding decision. And I have additional accomplishments, and my outline for my research has changed fundamentally. So can I just continue with creating a new application, or should I contact NRF regarding my previous application?
So won't you please email the CoE-MaSS mailbox that was on this presentation, that you also would have got this call reminder from. Send those details, and then I will contact the NRF directly in connection with that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I've put that email address in the chat as well.
All right, thank
just,
you.
No problem. Just a quick chat question. So Fabian asks, they say they finished their honours degree in a year and 6 months. Can they still apply? Because the first set of rules said you had to finish in 1 year, but the scorecard showed something about finishing in more than 1 year. They're just looking for clarification.
I would recommend that you do apply because it's got that grading. So it will depend also on the other, what grading you get on the other items in that rubric.
And then I've got a hand up. I'm so sorry, I might mispronounce this. Mo?
Hi, everyone. The question that I have is, I did my honors last year, and I'm graduating next month on the 11th, right? So the question that I have is my transcript enough for the document that's required for my qualifications in the application, or do I need the actual, or is the transcript enough?
No, the transcript is enough.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. And then I also see, sorry, in the chat, does population studies fall under CoE-MaSS linked? It does depend on exactly what you want to do with population studies, but just as a broad topic, it does seem outside the scope. But what I'd like you to do in DCWA is go onto the CoE-MaSS website, have a look at the research areas, and see if your particular study fits into any of the CoE-MaSS themes or research areas. That would be the best thing.
Yeah, like it could be, I mean, I think that's a really good idea, Casey, because I can think of several that might fall under, but it depends specifically what the research is on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to the chat in a second. Boka?
Right, can you hear me?
Walker, we can't really hear you. Is there any way you can increase the mic sound?
Perfect. Can you hear me now?
A bit better.
All right. Let me just see if I can increase. Yeah, is it better now?
Much better.
Much better.
Oh, perfect. Thanks. Yeah. So I'm sort of from the supervisory side of things, and I was just interested in a couple of details regarding the supervisor letter that I have to give to my student to submit. Yeah, so I was looking at the application guideline form, and under the attachment section in the letter, I see that there are a couple of things that also have to be included there. Things like letter should be stamped by the DA at the institutional postgrad office, and a couple of other things like confirmation that the institution has the necessary infrastructure to sort of support the student. So are these all the things that I have to put in the letter, or are these sort of separate documents that would be provided by the DA at my institution?
No, you would put that in your letter. And that's why, thank you very much for coming in as a supervisor, because you've read the documentation. So please, to supervisors and students, please make sure you read that documentation very carefully. It's very important. So yes, you can put it all on one letter, and then get it stamped, etc., and then send it to your student to submit it.
I see. Okay, now that clarifies things.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So in the chat, Mweli has asked, and I actually thought of this question as well. What happens if they are applying with the NRF and they're currently studying, they want to continue at the university, so they're at, but then they later decide to go to a different university? Or maybe, I don't know if they mean also change supervisors, but I don't know how that works, but can it be transferred?
No, the award is given for the student at the university where you applied. The reason for this is that, as I mentioned, there are certain categories, like, for example, historically disadvantaged universities. So if you had to apply to one of these, University of Limpopo, for example, and you get awarded a bursary, that's almost come out of the HDI budget, if I can call it that. And then if you want to then transfer to Cape Town, you know, you may not have been awarded the funding if you'd originally applied at Cape Town University. So it is for the university that you put on your application.
Yeah. And I imagine it's also impacted by the fact that you have to attend a university within our node network. So you kind of, for example, like University of Mpumalanga isn't one of our nodes yet. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that information you find on the CoE website, or the node universities that we work with.
Okay, thanks. Martins?
Yeah, hi.
Yes, right.
Okay. I was just curious about the international process.
Martins, are you driving?
Sorry?
Are you using Bluetooth? We can't hear you almost.
I'm not only from
yeah, no, we can't actually understand. Well, I can't, so I don't know if Casey can.
Perhaps you can type a message.
I was not talking instead. Okay.
I'll come back to you. Thanks, Martin. Simon?
Yeah, sorry, I've got another question. I was looking at the research outputs, and so I have a paper. It was accepted to a workshop at a conference, and so the workshop, the paper was peer reviewed, but because it's a workshop, it's not archival. So where I can see that there's various like under primary research outputs, it says peer reviewed conference outputs. Would this not count as that, or would it count as that?
Yes, I would put that in, and then, you know, add it as an attachment, Simon.
Okay, and so would I put it under the category of peer-reviewed conference output.
Yes.
All right. And then, so there's also other research outputs. So I'm presenting a talk. It's called the Ndaba X. It's in a couple weeks' time.
Yes.
So
Yes,
I haven't
know.
presented that. I haven't presented that yet, but can I add that as a research
That you
output?
will be, yes. And just
Okay.
say you will be presenting it at the conference and the exact dates.
All right. And then my final one, I co-authored a technical report, but it's not in the field of, it's a political science technical report. So my contribution was from like a computer science perspective. Can I still include that?
Yes, I will include it. Even if you put it under, yeah, include that in your outputs and add it, because that does add to your research competency.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That.
Simon, you're
Yes.
busy doing your doctorate.
Yes. So.
And what year are you in, your first year?
So this is the first year that I've been in doctorates, but because my master's was upgraded, I think officially I count as third year. So under those guidelines, I've still got that additional year. So I'm like applying for that final year.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Thanks.
All right, great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, in the chat, Casey, I can see you replied to some. There's one about science engagement from Navin that says, I've been filling out my application. There's no plan for science engagement in my research. I've put that in my application, but it says it's incomplete. Casey, do you mind if I address this?
Sure.
Well, I was just going to say, especially, sorry, Navin, I don't know if you can turn your mic on. What level are you applying for? Master's or PhD? Navin, I might be mispronouncing the name. Okay, Masters. Navin, I'm going to just take it then that you've never done anything kind of in terms of psychom, science communication. So this is kind of part and parcel of what I do for the center. We're all involved in psychom and science engagement, but kind of a core part of my job is to be able to help researchers kind of realize what they can do or potentially do. So if anyone is unclear about, sort of what to put in this bit of the application, I've put my email address up. Just I'll put it on again at the end. Please get in touch with me. Because so the reason I'm addressing this is it might be for more than one person. Just get in touch with me via my email, and we can kind of chat about it, because there is like, when people say, but my research doesn't, there is no science engagement. The correct answer is actually there is, but someone, often needs to help you see it. Which is, like I said, it's a large part of what we do at the center. So I'm quite happy to help with that in specific cases.
And I'd love all the queries to go to the CoE mailbox.
Oh, do you? Okay, so sorry. So scrap my email address, send them all to. Okay, yeah. But then they'll get directed to whoever can help with them, yeah. Casey, I see you or addressing some in the chat.
Navin's applying for masters.
Yes, I saw that. I'm struggling with my chat, sorry. Alignment to national imperatives. Casey, do you want to talk to this?
Sorry, I haven't got to that one yet.
So they're curious about Martins is curious about alignment to national imperatives. When should they select one of the categories? What's expected in the justification field?
Just a bit of like expanding why you feel that whatever research you're doing is aligning with this. particular national imperative, like a description. You could also, because it would be very subject specific, you could ask your potential supervisor for some ideas on how to address that one, but it's related exactly to your research. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I think we've addressed all the questions in the chat, and there aren't any hands up.
If there
But I
are
think-
further questions, first of all, please remember to read the documentation first. That is your first port of call. And then if your questions are not answered in one of those documents, then you're welcome to email us. If we can't answer, we will find out the relevant message. I mean, the relevant information, and send it to you. But there are lots of things that are answered in that frequently asked questions document, especially.
Brilliant. So just want to say thank you. We've had a phenomenal amount of people joined us today, but it's obviously a very big thank you to Casey, not just for, you know, presenting this, but the huge amounts of preparation that you put into this session. It's been brilliant. Thank you. And I will be, yeah, so as I said, I'll be getting the video edited and we'll get the slides up on our funding, on our scholarships page. So that, you know, you can also refer other people to it, or you can remind yourself of anything. So thank you everyone, and thank you, Casey.
Thank you. It's been my absolute pleasure. And I wish you all the best of luck with your applications. And please remember to send us a copy of that preview once you've submitted everything. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Oh no, Sipo, I have seen you. Just email us, please. I'll put the email in again.
Okay, cool.